My name is Alex. I'm 27 years old, and about 6 months ago, I left my parents' house with the thought that it would be the last time. I never imagined I would become the child who abandoned their family. Throughout my life, I had always been the good child, the reliable sibling, and the financial backbone for the entire household. But things aren't always what they seem on the surface. In my family, there was an unwritten rule. Tyler, my older brother, was the golden child. And me? I was the forgotten child, the one who always had to try harder to be recognized. From an early age, I grew accustomed to watching my parents, Jessica and Robert, forgive Tyler for every mistake. Meanwhile, I had to get straight A's, do household chores, and always be the good kid. I still vividly remember the day I won first place in the state math competition. I stood alone on stage, scanning the auditorium, searching for my parents' faces in the crowd. They weren't there. Instead, they were watching Tyler play soccer, a match his team lost as usual. When I came home with the trophy, my mother simply said, "Good job, son. Put it on the shelf." Then she went back to consoling Tyler about the loss. "We're a family," my parents would often say. "We always stick together, help each other out." But gradually, I realized that helping each other meant I helped them, never the other way around. Emma, my girlfriend, was the first to point this out. We met at the financial firm where I work. She's straightforward yet tactful, a rare combination. "Alex, can't you see they're taking advantage of you?" she asked after hearing about how I was paying for Tyler's college tuition, even though he dropped out after the first semester. I didn't want to believe it. They were my family. I loved them. But Emma had planted a seed of doubt in me, and that seed began to sprout. Recently, I started seeing Dr. Mitchell, a therapist. Initially, I felt embarrassed about seeking professional help, but during those first sessions, I realized I was carrying an enormous emotional burden. "Alex," she said, "you are not responsible for making your parents happy. That's not your role." It was the first time I'd heard this, and it changed everything. It started with small amounts. "Alex, can you help us with the electricity bill this month? We're a bit short," my mother said over the phone when I had just received my first paycheck after college. Of course I agreed. It was just a small amount, and they had raised me. I owed them that, right? But then the requests kept growing. From electricity bills to groceries, then car insurance, and finally, the mortgage. "You're our pride and joy," they would say. "You're always the one we can count on." Those compliments were like a drug to me. I craved them after years of living in Tyler's shadow. Speaking of Tyler, he dropped out of college after a year because university isn't for me. He moved from job to job, never staying more than a few months. "They don't understand my talent," Tyler would complain while sitting on our parents' couch playing video games all day. He never contributed a penny toward living expenses, yet he used our parents' car and ate the food they bought. Meanwhile, I was paying almost every bill in the house. Each month, the amount I sent home increased. I started canceling my own plans, vacations with Emma, savings for my own home, to send more money back home. "Don't you see something wrong here?" Emma asked one evening after I canceled our weekend trip because my mother called needing money for a washing machine repair. "They're taking advantage of your kindness, Alex. They're turning you into an ATM." I felt angry hearing that, but deep down I knew she was right. I was starting to feel drained, not just financially, but emotionally. Every call from home made my heart race with anxiety. Every text from my mother made me tense before I even read it. "I don't know how to get out of this situation," I confessed to Dr. Mitchell during a session. "I feel trapped." "Alex," she said, "sometimes the clearest boundaries are the ones we have to draw multiple times." I didn't know that my boundaries would soon be drawn in a way I never imagined. Everything came to a head on a rainy Sunday. I drove to my parents' house as usual for family lunch, a tradition I still tried to maintain despite the hour-long drive. As I parked outside, I noticed a new car in the garage, a brand new SUV that looked expensive. "Whose car is that?" I asked as I entered the house. "Oh, that's Tyler's," my mother answered with a bright smile. "We bought it for him last week. His old one wasn't safe anymore." I stood there, stunned. Just 2 weeks earlier, they had called me saying they couldn't afford to pay the heating bill. I had sent them $800, almost my entire bonus from work. You bought Tyler a new car? I asked again, trying to stay calm. While still telling me you're struggling financially? Alex, don't make a big deal out of this, my father interjected. Tyler needs a car for job interviews. What interviews? I couldn't hold back. He doesn't work. He's never kept a job for more than 3 months. The atmosphere in the room became tense. Tyler, who had just walked in from the living room, looked at me with angry eyes. Not everyone is as lucky as you, Alex. Not everyone has a perfect job fall into their lap. Lucky? I almost shouted. I worked hard for my position. I studied all night while you partied. I did unpaid internships while you lounged on the couch. Enough. My mother slammed her hand on the table. Alex, we need to talk. We need you to take over the entire mortgage and bills from now on. Our financial situation is worse than we thought. I looked around the room, from the new TV in the living room to the expensive watch on my father's wrist. There were no signs of financial struggle anywhere. What about Tyler? I asked. What will he contribute? Your brother needs time to find his path, my father said, his voice dropping. You can't understand the pressure he's under. That was the last straw. 27 years of anger, disappointment, and hurt erupted within me. I've given you too much, I said, my voice shaking. It's time I start thinking about myself. If you don't want to help your family, my mother shouted, her face red with anger, then you're not part of this family anymore. The room fell silent. I looked into my mother's eyes, searching for signs of regret, but saw only anger. If you walk out that door, she continued, don't ever come back. I looked at each of them. My father, who was staring at the floor, Tyler, who was smirking, and my mother, who was looking at me with challenging eyes. No one spoke up to defend me. I quietly went upstairs, gathered a few personal items I still kept in my old room, and walked out of the house without another word. I drove back to my apartment in a daze, tears blurring my vision. As I closed my car door, I felt like I was closing a chapter of my life. I called Emma and told her everything. She came over immediately, holding me as I cried, for the first time since I was a child. You did the right thing, she whispered. You were so brave. Brave? I didn't feel brave. I felt empty, alone, and terrified. But at the same time, another feeling was forming, a sense of relief. For the first time in my life, I could breathe without feeling a weight on my shoulders. In the days that followed, my phone constantly buzzed with missed calls and messages. My mother, how could you treat your parents like this? My father, you've broken your mother's heart. Tyler, you're so selfish, you know that? I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I focused on building my new life. I found a new apartment, further from work but cheaper, allowing me to save more. I started decorating it the way I wanted, not the way my mother would choose, but in a way that reflected who I truly was. Emma helped me pick out furniture. My colleagues invited me for dinners, movies, and gradually, I started building a social network that had nothing to do with my family. In my therapy sessions with Dr. Mitchell, I struggled with feelings of guilt. I feel like I abandoned them, I confessed. Alex, she said, you tried to help them for years, but there's a line between helping and being exploited. They crossed that line long ago. Gradually, I learned to accept my decision. I learned not to jump every time my phone buzzed. I learned not to feel guilty when spending money on myself. My relationship with Emma also grew deeper. No longer distracted by constant family crises, I could be truly present when I was with her. We started making plans for the future, a future I hadn't dared to dream about before because I always felt tied to my family. You're different now, Emma told me one evening as we lay on the couch, watching a movie neither of us was really paying attention to. You laugh more, you're lighter. And she was right. I had changed. I was learning to live for myself, not for someone else's approval. It was a difficult journey, but with each passing day, I felt stronger, more confident in my decision. I didn't know that this silence was just the calm before the storm. 6 months passed in relative silence. I had built a new life, new routines. I had even started sleeping better. No more nightmares about disappointing my family. Then one morning, my phone buzzed with a message from my father. Why haven't you paid this month's mortgage? I stared at the screen, confused. I hadn't been paying the mortgage since I left. Why would they expect me to continue paying for a house where I was no longer welcome? Within an hour, my phone started exploding with messages and calls from the entire family. My mother, "The bank is calling us. We're about to lose the house." My father, "You need to help us, Alex." Tyler, "Are you really going to let mom and dad lose their home?" I waited until I was calm before responding. I thought I wasn't welcome anymore. That opened the floodgates for a new wave of manipulation. My mother, "How could you let your parents lose their home after all we've done for you?" Tyler, "Are you really letting mom and dad lose the house just to prove a point?" My father, "We just need a little help, just this month." I almost gave in. It was a conditioned reflex after so many years. They ask, I give. But then I remembered Dr. Mitchell's words. Boundaries exist for a reason. Instead of sending money, I decided to investigate. I called the bank where they had their mortgage. I still had access because I had been making payments for years. What I discovered left me stunned. The mortgage hadn't been paid for 8 months. 8 months. But I had been sending money regularly during that time, until I left 6 months ago. "This can't be right," I told the bank representative. "I was sending money to my parents to pay this loan." "I'm sorry, sir," she replied, "but no payments have been made for the past 8 months. The house is in the process of foreclosure." I hung up, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. They hadn't been using my money to pay the mortgage. They had used it for something else. Perhaps Tyler's new car, or the vacation I knew they had taken during the summer. I felt betrayed on the deepest level. Not only had they taken advantage of me, but they had also lied to me. They took my money while knowing full well they weren't using it for its intended purpose. As I was trying to comprehend the extent of this deception, another message from my mother popped up. "Alex, we're going to lose the house if you don't help. Is that what you really want? Do you really want to destroy your family?" For the first time, I saw clearly the game being played. This wasn't about helping family. This was about controlling me through guilt and obligation. I texted back, "We need to talk, all of us." I set up a video call with the entire family that evening. Emma sat beside me for moral support, though she stayed out of the camera's view. When their faces appeared on the screen, my mother with her angry expression, my father looking tired, and Tyler with his indifferent gaze, I felt a strange calmness. I was no longer the child afraid of their disapproval. "I spoke with the bank today," I began, my voice steady. "What did you do with the money I sent for the past 8 months?" Silence. My mother looked at my father looked down. Tyler suddenly became interested in a spot off screen. "Alex, you don't understand," my mother finally spoke. "Our financial situation is complicated." "No, it's not complicated," I interrupted. "I sent money to pay the mortgage. You didn't use it for that. That's fraud." "Don't use that word," my father suddenly erupted. "We're family. Family doesn't defraud each other." "Then what did you do with my money?" I asked again, not backing down. Finally, the truth started coming out. My money had been used to buy Tyler's new car, to fund his failed business venture, a sneaker retail store I had never heard about. And worst of all, part of the money had been used for a family vacation to Mexico, a vacation they never mentioned, let alone invited me to. "You went on vacation with my money and didn't invite me?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're always busy with work," my mother justified. "We knew you wouldn't be able to come." I looked at Tyler, who had remained silent throughout the conversation. "What about you, Tyler? Do you have anything to say?" Tyler shrugged, his expression annoyed. "I don't know why you're making such a big deal out of this. It's just money. You make plenty of it." That statement awakened something in me. Not anger, but profound disappointment. I realized they truly didn't understand. To them, I wasn't a person with feelings, dreams, and goals of my own. I was just a resource to exploit. "It's not just money," I said, my voice lowering. "It's respect. It's trust. You took those things from me and treated them as if they had no value." My mother started crying, tears that would have once made me immediately give in. But now I could see them as part of the familiar game. Alex, how can you say such things? She sobbed. After all we've done for you? We sacrificed our whole lives for our children. No, I shook my head. You sacrificed for Tyler. I was just the one paying for those sacrifices. I took a deep breath and said the words I knew would change everything forever. I won't be sending any more money. Not a penny. You lied to me, you used me, and now you have to face the consequences. The reaction was swift and violent. My mother screamed that I was an ungrateful child. My father threatened to disown me. Tyler called me selfish. But for the first time, those words didn't affect me anymore. I felt as if a curtain had been lifted, and I was finally seeing the truth about my family. I love you, I said, my voice calm amid their storm of anger. But I can't continue this relationship. It's toxic and it's destroying me. I ended the call amid shouts and threats. Emma held me as I trembled, not from fear, but from the overwhelming sense of liberation. I'm proud of you, she whispered. You were so brave. This time, I felt she was right. I had been brave, and I would need that bravery in the days to come. I had prepared myself for anger from my family. I had prepared for angry calls and messages, but I wasn't prepared for what came next. They launched a smear campaign against me. It started with distant relatives. I received messages from aunts, uncles, and cousins I barely spoke to. How could you treat your parents like this? Are you really letting your parents lose their home? Do you know how much your parents are suffering? Then came childhood friends, people I hadn't been in touch with for years. I heard you abandoned your family? Are you really refusing to help your parents? Even some colleagues started looking at me differently. I discovered that my mother had found them on LinkedIn and sent messages, telling a distorted story about me abandoning my family in their time of need. I felt surrounded. Each notification on my phone made my heart beat faster. Each new email made me anxious. I started avoiding social media where family members were posting vague updates about gratitude and family responsibility. They're trying to isolate you, Emma said when I showed her the latest messages. They want you to feel so alone that you'll go back to them. I knew she was right, but it didn't lessen the pain. There were nights I lay awake, wondering if I was the villain in this story. Was I truly ungrateful? Should I continue helping them, even though they had lied to me? Dr. Mitchell helped me through these crises. Alex, she said, this is a common reaction when someone breaks free from a toxic relationship. Manipulators never want to lose control. They will do anything to regain that control, including making you the villain in their story. I started setting new boundaries. I blocked my parents' and Tyler's phone numbers. I adjusted my privacy settings on social media. I explained the situation to my boss, who was understanding and ensured that no one from my family could contact me at work. Gradually, the storm began to subside. The people who truly cared about me, Emma, a few close friends, and even a couple of relatives who saw through the lies, stood by me. Others, those who only knew part of the story, eventually lost interest in the drama and went on with their lives. But the wounds remained. There were moments when I saw a happy family in the park, when I heard a colleague talk about vacationing with their parents. I felt a deep sadness for what I had lost, or perhaps more accurately, what I had never really had. One evening, as Emma and I were cooking dinner together, she placed her hand on my shoulder. You know, she said, sometimes family isn't the people who share our blood. Sometimes family is the people we choose, the ones who love and respect us for who we truly are. I looked into her eyes and saw what I had never really seen in my parents' eyes. Unconditional love, acceptance, and belief in my worth, not for what I could provide, but simply because I was me. And in that moment, I began to understand that while I had lost my biological family, I was building a new one based on respect, honesty, and genuine love. A year has passed since the day I walked out of my parents' house, a year full of challenges, pain, but also growth and self-discovery. I've been promoted at work, no longer distracted by constant family crises. I could focus on my career. I bought a small house, not a large mansion, but a space of my own, paid for with money I earned. not tied to guilt or obligation. Emma and I got engaged. I proposed during a hiking trip, an activity I never had time to enjoy before. As I knelt down, ring in hand, I realized it was the first time in my life I felt truly free to pursue my own happiness. I still see Dr. Mitchell, though less frequently now. "You've come a long way," she said during our most recent session. "You've built a life based on authenticity and self-respect. I no longer have contact with my parents or Tyler. I know from a relative that they lost the house and moved to a smaller apartment. Tyler is still unemployed. They still blame me for their situation. Sometimes I still feel guilty. Years of manipulation don't wash away overnight, but those feelings come less often. Instead, I focus on building the life I want with people who truly care about me." Emma and I have created new traditions: Sunday dinners with close friends, weekend trips to places we've never explored, quiet evenings reading books side by side. We're building a life based on mutual respect, honesty, and the simple joy of being ourselves. Emma's family has welcomed me as their son. The first time I had dinner with them, I was surprised when everyone actually listened when I spoke. No one interrupted me. No one made me feel unimportant. It was a strange but wonderful experience. "You deserve this," Emma told me afterward. "You deserve to be loved and respected." And slowly I'm starting to believe it. I don't know if I'll ever reconcile with my biological family. Perhaps someday, if they truly change, if they can see and acknowledge what they did, there might be a path to reconciliation. But I no longer hang my happiness on that hope. Instead, I focus on the present, on the family I'm building, on the love I'm experiencing, and on the person I'm becoming. It's not always easy. There are days I still miss them. Not what they did to me, but what we could have had together. But then I look around at the life I've built, and I know I made the right decision. I've learned that sometimes, to find your true family, you have to be brave enough to leave the people who gave birth to you. It's not a selfish or ungrateful act. It's an act of self-preservation and ultimately an act of self-love. My name is Alex. I'm 28 years old, and I've found my way home, not to the house where I grew up, but to the home I've built for myself, with people who truly love me for who I am.